So I want to make a video about some of the dangers of investing in real estate in the Dominican Republic. It's one of my favorite things to do. It's easy to make money if you do the right steps. And I want to talk about this because this is something that happens very frequently in the Dominican Republic. And scams. You find a lot of scammers that will try to sell you properties that do not belong to them, or that try to sell a property that may belong to them, but they really don't want to give you the title and all the other information. And I really want to kind of discuss that. Here's an example that happened earlier this year of Emmanuel Rivera Ledesma. So this guy was selling properties that one was never going to get finished, and then two, selling the same property to multiple people. And this is very common where somebody will sell, one apartment to like three, four, five, six, seven different people. Same with the same plot of land. So, reselling the same property over and over and over again. So you have to be very careful of that. There's a lot of shady real estate agents as well that may know something that's going on, but they care about their commission. And this also goes for foreign real estate agents. So just because that person may speak your language, they may be from the United States or Canada or somewhere in Europe, does not necessarily mean that they're a trustworthy person, because a lot of criminals come from those countries to try to resell you properties just so they can get a higher commission. And greed gets in the way a lot of the times because you have people that are expecting the same amount of commission in the Dominican Republic to live a certain type of lifestyle. I know a lot of real estate agents that I've dealt with in the past, and me not buying from them, but seeing how they interact with other people in places like Cabarete, Sosua, Puerto Plata, Punta Cana, where that real estate agent may be somebody that's inexperienced, or they may have a vice or a habit that they have to feed. So they're very desperate for money. And by vices and habits, I mean like, controlled substance use and so on. So you have to be very careful who you're dealing with when it comes to a seller or even a real estate agent. And I'm going to talk about some different things that you can use to protect yourself. And here's just a picture of, an article that you can read about this guy. But this happens, he's not just one of the only people that has done this. Multiple people have done this. So you have to be very careful. And also remember that real estate agents are not your friends. It's just a business relationship. And that's not the case in all things, but a lot of the times it's just a business relationship. Once the business is done, you no longer stay in communication with this person. A good real estate person will try to continue business with you because you may want to purchase from them in the future or recommend some of your friends and associates to them. But people that are very short-sighted do not think that way. So you got to remember, it's not like that here in Dominican Republic, Colombia, Brazil. But so let's kind of get into this. So one of the red flags that you'll run into when purchasing real estate, and this could even go from a big company like Remax. This happens too, but I would say go with a big company, and I'm not endorsing Remax. There's plenty of good companies. There's Tucasa, which is another one, which is pretty good. Let's go here. Tucasa RD, which is a good website to either buy from or rent from. But there's several different ones, but I won't go through that in this video. But one of the key things to watch out for if you're purchasing from someone is the way they want you to pay them. Cash, wire transfer, and so on, and they want everything in full, or they want to do owner financing. In the Dominican Republic, I suggest this: stay away from owner financing. Stay away from owner financing. There's multiple reasons why. Even when it comes to land, stay away from owner financing most of the time. Unless it's like a big residential property that's has a lot of experience in the past, stay away from owner financing. And here's why. Because too many banks, even if you're a foreigner, will allow for you to have a mortgage through them called una hipoteca, un préstamo hipoteca. Multiple banks do it. Banreservas, Scotiabank, Associação Civil, Associação Popular, and Banco Popular. Both of these are two different associations, banking institutions. They just have similar names, so don't get confused. I tend to go for associations just because they're just a little bit easier to deal with. But you can go to any of these and they'll offer you mortgages and typically 20% down, sometimes even 15% down. And you can get a 30-year mortgage. The interest rates are a little high, but you can pay it off in like 2 years. And you don't have to worry about penalties and stuff like that. And this is one of the safest ways. This is actually the safest way to get a place, where put a mortgage on the place and then use that as a way to make sure that you have that property. And let me explain why you should do it this way. This is probably the only way that you should do it. And one, because you get to leverage the bank's lawyers. So you don't have to worry about whether your lawyer is messing around with you, stringing you along, does your lawyer make a mistake, and so on. And the red flag comes in where the seller does not want to deal with the banks or financing through the banks and offers you to finance directly through them. Here's the problem with that. Number one, that personal finance interest rate is going to be through the roof. If you think 15% is high, they're going to make it a lot higher than this. And what they're going to do is, when you default on that with personal finance, they're just going to get the place back. And I see that happen a lot, where basically they have sold a property multiple times to various different people, and they want you to default so they keep the property. They never really have an intention of you keeping that property. Versus with the bank, it's in their best interest for you to pay that loan. They don't want your house. They want the interest money from the loan. That's what they're concerned about. Versus a lot of personal financing with owners, they really want the house. And that's where the scam actually starts. Because if you get a loan through a bank, the bank will pay them in full. So the loan will be the payment will be satisfied through the bank, and the bank will put the property name, the title, in your name and place a lien against that. And that's what happens here in the Dominican Republic. So they do everything by the book. I've done this several times, where the bank will get the property for me, transfer the title with their lawyers, the bank's lawyers. I can actually go to this organization and let me put this in here. So, Registro Inmobiliario. So this is the government agency that deals with the registration of titles, dislinda, and so on. To make sure you know who owns a property, you can go here. There's one of these in every major province: Puerto Plata, La Altagracia, Santo Domingo, Santiago. You go to this place to make sure you know, one, who owns that property, and two, are there any liens currently against it? So you want a property that does not have a lien against it. So you make sure that, your lawyer goes to this place, but you can go here yourself. Like, you don't have to just worry about what the lawyer does, because sometimes you have to look after what the lawyer is doing, making sure that they're doing the right thing. The bank will actually do all this stuff for you and transfer the property into your name. And that way, when you go to this office, you show up on the property. A lot of personal finance sellers, they're not going to do this for you. They're going to have a contract that says, once you satisfy payments to them after 5 or 10 or 15 years, then they'll do this. But what guarantee do you really have in 10 years that, one, that person's still going to be alive, And two, that once you finally pay them, oh yeah, I'm going to finally transfer you the property. And I see that happen a lot where after 10 years of paying, you've paid everything off, you find out this person never really had this property in the first place, or they had already transferred it to somebody else. That's another scam that gets run. And now you have 10 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars lost. So definitely go through a bank. The bank will make sure that you are registered on this with the government, and you don't have to worry about anything. You just have to pay the bank, and everything's wrapped into that mortgage, including insurance and so on. So you don't have to worry about anything else like that, as well as property taxes. So everything is just kind of like in the United States or Canada. That's probably the safest way to get any type of property. And like I said, the interest rates may be high, but personal financing, I trust you, is higher. And they're going to try to tell you, oh, well, it's only 1% a month, but you have to think of, the entire year. Like 1% a month is more than, or 2% a month is more than, this interest rate. It's kind of ridiculous. So you have to just run the numbers. But this is the safest thing that you can do. You really should avoid doing any type of financing outside of a bank, even if you have the money, because you can always eat the penalty, which can be 1 or 2%. And it's best to pay the penalty to the bank if you want to satisfy the loan before 2 years. Like I said, you can have a 30-year mortgage. Have a 30-year mortgage and then just pay it off, in 6 months or a year or 2 years if you don't want to pay the penalty. But that way you make sure that everything's registered directly with you. Also, you want to make sure that the taxes are paid on it as well. Puestos internos. So, RD. So and you may have seen this, the DGII. So you make sure that all the taxes are paid on the property as well. So the taxes are up to date. You don't want to buy a property and the person hasn't paid their property taxes. And property taxes are required for properties over a certain amount. So these are the two most important government agencies to go to before buying any type of property. This includes land, building, whatever. One, to make sure it's registered, properly demarcated, Linda, and so on, and the person that's selling it to you actually holds the title. And then here, making sure that this person doesn't owe the government. You don't want to try to buy a property and there's all these back taxes on it. But that's why you go through a bank, because the bank will do its due diligence. And I'm not sponsored by any of these banks, but in the past, I've definitely gone through Asociación Cibao, Asociación Popular. Those are like the best in my opinion. There's also Asociación Nacional. And then, you have the banks as well. And there's different types of préstamos. Like, you have a regular one, a basic mortgage, and there's also ones for, vacations, which have slightly different conditions. And we can actually go through that here. They have one for residents that reside outside the country, and then they have one for people that reside in the country. And the reason for this is because they do a income verification process. And, basically the more you put down, the less that kind of matters. So just make sure that you have a decent amount of money down. I would say 20%, 30%, you're definitely going to be in there. And the process doesn't really take that long to close. They just go through a process to protect both you and them. Now, the bank is on your side. So I would definitely go through a bank. And you can also do this with vehicles. I really don't want to touch on the whole vehicle thing too much. But if you're going to finance a vehicle, definitely go through a bank. The interest rates, again, are going to be a lot lower. And then also the whole repossession process. If you go through a personal financing at one of these dealerships, they are waiting for you to mess up so they can repossess your vehicle. They're going to call you. They're going to harass you. They're going to try to repossess your vehicle as soon as possible. That way they can resell it to somebody else. And I've seen this happen a ton of times. So they're way more aggressive than in the United States. or Canada about repossessions. Like they want you to mess up so they can basically get a whole bunch of free money and then resell the car. Same with the houses versus a bank, which is very lenient because they don't want the property. They want the interest. They want the money from the loan. So it's in their best interest for you to just pay them through the loan. But anyway, that's all I had to say. I'm going to make a video about some of the really good investment options that there are in the Dominican Republic. But this channel really is going to be focused more towards tech. But I just want people to understand that, you can leverage, your job remotely to buy property and other invest in other vehicles. So thanks again, guys, for tuning in. Talk to you guys soon.